Week 10 recap, let's do it. Starting at quarterback, what do we see? Well, the best that we saw was on Thursday night. It was on Thursday night. Burrow, Jackson, they lead the way. They're the stars of Week 10, which bodes well for the quarterback position in general. I think it's a good week, at least at the top, instills some confidence in what you can get out of the elite quarterbacks. And in your Superflex Dynasty leagues, it's a positive to see Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts as well, rounding out the top three. Hurts again, nearly 30 for a third straight week. The headline, Hurts to be safe, question mark? I say that because Hurts, he is one of the safer quote-unquote quarterbacks, if you want to call it that. Safer in the sense of from a fantasy floor-ceiling combination. Look, the Eagles, they've got the guys on offense. They're going to get you into the red zone a handful of times each game. Bot, how we doing? You're going to get right in the end zone, right at the 1 yard line, tush push after tush push opportunity to get Hurts at least one score on the ground a game. And then you've got, of course, your A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Of course, now Dallas Goedert, thankfully, back in the fold. You've got opportunity after opportunity. Theo, what's up? How we doing? Opportunity after opportunity for Jalen Hurts to be right in the mix. To be, of course, a top 10, a quarterback one, quote unquote, but the quarterback one week after week. Speaking of one, K1, A1, Kyler Murray coming in at QB4 in the week, 28, near 29 points. Kyler Murray. Everybody was assuming we were going to see a better version of Kyler Murray. Of course, you get a Marvin Harrison Jr. This is a big week for him, I think, instilling some confidence in his value for the Dynasty community. Kyler's an interesting thought topic for me because of the blurred line that can sometimes just naturally form, the gulf, just differential, we'll call it, in how the NFL quarterback play translates to fantasy play, we'll call it. And look, let's call a spade a spade. I obviously just talked about Jalen Hurts. What do we favor in fantasy? We obviously we crave rushing upside, but rushing upside doesn't necessarily mean that you have a better chance at winning a football game at the NFL level. Of course, for the decision makers giving out contracts, deciding whether you're going to be a long-term franchise level player for that particular team. So Kyler's an interesting example to me, following the very fervent support, rightfully so, from a fantasy lens, but also the interesting discussion that always rears its head of, well, what is Kyler really from an NFL perspective? What actually is the level that Kyler Murray plays the quarterback position? When at the end of the day, what do you want to do? You're chasing a Super Bowl. So it's a very interesting debate here. Nonetheless, Kyler, K1, A1. Good performance from him. He absolutely should be capable of the near 28, 29, near 30 type potential week in, week out. He just should be. Levis leads the year ones and twos, the young gun, so to speak. It's a very surprise storyline. You definitely wouldn't have expected it necessarily, but almost 20 outside of the top 5, 6, 7, QB8 on the week. Will Levis, that is, has a decent week. We'll see what happens in Tennessee the rest of this season, really next NFL draft 25. But Will Levis, if he can string a true back half of the season where he's not amongst the worst, amongst the bottom 5 to 10 quarterbacks in the league, if he can get some traction, I think he might just buy himself another year. Especially when the top of this class, Shador, I don't know if they go to Tennessee. I don't know if Dion really allows him to go to Tennessee. I don't know if Cam Ward, if the Titans would be in a position to draft him. I just don't. And so with Will Levis being at the top this week, well, what does that mean? Well, we didn't really see a great week from the current rookies. We didn't see a great week from the Strouds of the world, of course. So Will Levis, I gotta give some credit where it's due. Solid week, a quarterback 1 week. But speaking of the year ones and twos, Bryce Young in particular, Bryce Young would have been next in line, right behind Will Levis in terms of the young performers of the week. He had a touchdown. If you don't know, if watching that Sunday morning game in Munich, he had a touchdown where it was just a dumb formational line penalty with Jatavian Sanders involved, and the whole, with respect to where you're lined up along the offensive line extended, it was just a stupid penalty. So Bryce Young, touchdown taken off the board, some 4-odd, depending on your format, points that just otherwise he would have had. And look, he's just Bryce Young, man. He's, talk about the benefit of sitting behind. So we can question the merits, or question not the merits, but just the optics or the motivation to really bench a young quarterback, right, this early in his career. But Bryce Young, without a doubt, has looked better. He's looked better as a result of sitting behind Andy Dalton. As a result, whether you want to attribute it directly to the guy who's ahead of him in Dalton, or just the general idea of being a little bit removed, one step back, a couple steps forward. I think that's been the trajectory for Bryce. I mean, he's clearly finding something that we just haven't seen. Just being a little bit more aggressive, not being so tentative. I think that's very, very positive for Bryce Young, and we'll see. I mean, it's just absolute BS. The toe tapping every week, Canales, with naming a starter. We'll watch the tape, buddy. At some point, I know Tepper's calling the shots, but you have to come down with a different excuse than we'll watch. You're on the field watching the game in real time, surrounded by 100 other people in your organization. What are they all? Are they all not enthused by what they're seeing by Bryce Young? It's just such a tired exercise week after week after week we're seeing now with Dave Canales in the press conference. Just name Bryce the starter for the rest of this season. Addison or Cooper at Superflex. So more week to week. Cooper, I don't know, recovering from injury. It's a tough one. I'd have to look into the matchup a little bit to decide, obviously. I mean, Buffalo, it's just been an interesting, not completely unforeseen with how very much non-volume passing team that they've been. You know, rushing, you got to use your quarterback, you got to use your running back, the effectiveness of that ground game. Compare it to Minnesota. Been a good year for Minnesota. Obviously, Sam Darnold having a solid year, although a little bit iffy of recent weeks. So Addison or Cooper. Let's look up. Let's see the matchups. Let me dive in. Who? Jordan Addison, Minnesota Vikings. Let's see, Vikings schedule. All right, so we're talking the Titans. Right off the bat, I mean, seeing the Titans, I think it's got to be L'Jarius Sneed dealing with. I mean, I think he's out for the year now. You juxtapose that, the Bills schedule, got Chiefs. Oh yeah, I mean, I just can't. I don't have enthusiasm to start anybody against the Chiefs, a receiver that is. So it's got to be Addison for me. Speaking of Chiefs, actually, decent little segue. Mahomes. Mahomes has been a victim almost of his own success, of his own team success at least. The Chiefs just find ways to win games. I mean, talk about the karmic powers of a unbelievable blocked kick to survive at home versus the Broncos. It's just unbelievable. The Chiefs just this karmic power that no one can really explain or seemingly understand. And not that we're ever going to understand, I don't think. So the Chiefs keep rolling, but Pat Mahomes not quite rolling at all for you from a fantasy perspective relative to what you had expected. I think we're seeing, to a decent degree, just the benefit of a Rashee Rice that he has in that offense. I mean, he for sure makes a difference. Be interested to see with the Pacheco return looming. Pacheco, does he keep opposing teams maybe a little bit more honest? Maybe a little bit more loaded boxes with his running style? Open things up a little bit in the pass game. Interested to monitor how things change for the KC offense. Look, at the end of the day, they know they're going against Pat Mahomes week in, week out, so good luck, right? Mahomes still ends up technically as a QB1 this week, QB11, but 16.5, I mean, that's just not good enough. That's not what anybody's expecting. 6.3 yards per attempt, 42 attempts, only one touchdown. Rushing, no crazy toe tap along the sideline for 30 yards and a touchdown. Nothing like that. Nothing crazy in that sense. Bottom line with Pat Mahomes, again, with the lack of enthusiasm, it's not a time to panic sell. It's not a time to panic sell in Dynasty. You've just got to have some patience, because he absolutely does have the ability any given week to be in this top 5, to go for 30. He just does, okay? The likelihood, of course, doesn't look all that enticing given what we've seen this season, but there just is. It's Pat Mahomes. It's Mahomes at the end of the day. Sounds like a weak explanation, but it's the guy that we've seen dominate. Not quite in the fantasy sense just yet this year, but I certainly think there's reason to hold. There's reason to envision greener pastures in your fantasy box score. Just, I'm not looking to sell, but you don't sell Pat Mahomes at this current price where he's already dipped down into barely a top 10 quarterback in Dynasty. Flacco, brother, he's no longer starting. Thank God, Anthony Richardson. Talk about Bryce Young. That makes it 2 of the top 3-4 picks in the 2023 draft at quarterback. Benched in year 2, sit behind for a little while, and all of a sudden, let's see what it does for AR. We'll see what it does for Anthony Richardson. Flacco, he was always this stopgap guy. He clearly is not the player that the Browns enjoyed so much last year. To what degree it's on Flacco or situation or other external extenuating circumstances, I guess we'll never know. But Flacco, he clearly is able to do a job in spurts, in isolation for you. But as a long-term starter, it was never going to be the case for the Colts. It just wasn't. It was seeming like it was just going to be a matter of time. You want a dynamic player in that Colts offense, and Anthony Richardson, it's obviously night and day. No offense to Flacco. I think he'll tell you as much. Very likable guy. That is Joe Flacco. He understands. I think he himself gets he was never going to be this long-term solution, any type of long-term solution, however you want to call it, for the Colts. So look, AR, it's big time just getting his job back. It's like you don't know what you have till it's gone. Just instilling some hopium for the Dynasty community with AR. Go out there. He absolutely, we talk about the theme with this position, rushing upside. I mean, he's of course got the potential to be right in this top 5 mix any given week. So gotta love it for Anthony Richardson. Jaden Daniels, on the other hand, not as favorable or as positive of a narrative in the sense of got a tough matchup coming up against the Eagles on Thursday Night Football. A little bit of a decline. not the 20-plus performances the last couple weeks, but Jaden Daniels, I think the bottom line is maybe start to check, but be prepared to maybe check in to see how the owner of the Jaden Daniels in your league, see how they're feeling. Just check how they're feeling. Is a honeymoon period over where where Jaden Daniels was, okay, QB1 overall, take him over anybody. Just check in. Because long term, of course, the guy, it's tier 1 upside. It just is with Jaden Daniels. So if he goes out there, struggles tomorrow night against my Eagles, very much intrigued to try to capture on somewhat of a potential buy low, but still obviously you're going to pay a premium, a hefty price for Jaden Daniels, but to just check in, see if the honeymoon phase is maybe over for the Jaden Daniels perception of who has him in your league. On the flip side, Caleb to improve. Overhauled, a lot of coaching changes. Of course, not Matt Eberflus himself, but that's just par for the course, mostly, generally, in NFL circles. But it's going to come. It's going to come in the offseason. That's where I'm at with Chicago. Fingers crossed, all signs you would hope point to a Ben Johnson, potentially. Not going to be that far of a move for him. It's in division, yes, so there's, I guess, the rivalry component. People thought maybe, hey, he was going to be Jaden Daniels' coach in Washington. Did not work out. Just got to hope Ben Johnson's the guy in Chicago. I think there's a realistic chance. I know everybody's talking about the Chef D last week. He's going to be very, 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 very selective. Which, look, he's earned his right. He's earned his right to be that. But with Caleb, even in the interim, right now, got Thomas Brown taking over as OC. A guy who was with Bryce Young just last year in Carolina. So, how awesome do you feel? You feel great right now with no more Shane Waldron, but you also have to understand it might not be. It's probably not going to be a quick fix for that Chicago offense. What can we hope for realistically? Just want some gradual improvement. Talk about the guys you respect the most, or at least I do, in the NFL and the media industry. I mean, a Daniel Jeremiah talking about Caleb. I mean, he just looks a little bit out of sorts. We need a reset now. We're getting it. Similar to a Jaden Daniels look, you're on a little bit of a precipice, I think, to be proactive. Let's say Caleb lights it on fire in the coming weeks. I'm definitely interested just checking in where the Caleb Williams owner in your league, where their head's at. Because Dynasty, I do think it's a relatively only up from what we've seen up to this point there in Chicago. Dak, done for the season. A guy, again, with the negative sentiment narrative around him, only interested in really buying. If you need someone for the future, for a long term, and you're not really all that invested this season in winning, why not check in on Dak, what his price is? He got a contract. He's going to be there in Dallas. Look, the true conspiracy, maybe there's a 1% chance Deion Sanders is the next coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Talk about, the idea that I think I understand definitely, former players, Rex Ryan bringing up the success, former players, people who understand your organization in and out, understand the culture, understand what it means more than just a outside coach. There's something to be said about that. And Jerry Jones, of course, he's going to go swing for the fences. I think Mike McCarthy, his days are numbered. Certainly. But Deion Sanders, does he take Shador with him? Somehow, some way. That would be insane. But if there is a team to do it, it would be Dallas. It would be a Jerry Jones-led organization. So, brace for the 1%. But talk about the other 99%. Dak Prescott, he's not going to be as low as this forever. Things are going to improve. So, have some patience. Have some patience with Dak Prescott. Running back. Bijan, Chuba, Chase Brown, James Conner, Rachaad White back in there. Starting, of course, Bijan, the RB1. Talked about it going into the season. My prediction, if there's a guy who's not going to give up his positional consensus number one overall ranking in Dynasty, it's Bijan Robinson. He's going to hold firm. You see, finally, it seems like after a year and a half into it, the Falcons, on a 4th and goal from the 1, getting stopped with a Tyler Algier. You bring in Bijan. Sure, he's not the sheer BMI that a Tyler Algier offers you, a brick house at true bruiser at running back. But when you got to have it, Bijan, he'll find a way for you. He will. He'll find a way on a random first, second, third down inside the 40 you're driving. He'll break the tackles. He'll accelerate. Have an incredible touchdown run. He's just capable, point blank. He's a special player. So finally, this feels like a bit of a turning point. Look, talking about the guy who's, personally, I've been this RB Renaissance truther this season. I think Bijan, of course, his success only bodes well for this running back Renaissance era that we're in Dynasty, in fantasy. Chuba, proven the contract. Show me the contract, I'll show you the production. Chuba looked like a scary injury for a second there, but apparently everything's all good, which is great. Healthy production. Certainly warranted a contract extension, and he did so, showing right after he signed, right then and there, a big part of why he got a second win in a row for the first time in quite a bit there in Carolina. So, Chuba, look, check my TikTok. A little bit of a panic sell. A little bit of a assumed worst with an impending rookie running back, you would think. But of course, we knew it was very unique circumstances with a rookie recovering from injury, which we'll get into. Chuba Hubbard just goes to show you, for a veteran running back who's had some success with a team, with a new coaching staff, you don't know. You never should quite assume. And especially with an injury below you, for a young player, things aren't going to be rushed. Things are not going to be rushed. And so you're going to have runway, and Chuba is clearly taking advantage of that runway in a meaningful way. And certainly in this conversation to finish strongly as an RB1 this year. Strongly. Talk about why I think we're in a running back renaissance, or, only giving more credence. Running backs can catch too. And the point being, you look at just some of the raw targets. Chase Brown, 11. Reem Hunt, 10. Rachaad White, 7. McCaffrey, 7. 6 for Hubbard. 6 for Kamara. 6 for Kyron Williams. 5 for Connor. 5 for A-Chain. Bijan with 4. Joe Mixon with 4. JT with 4. Brees with 4. Pollard with 4. In PPR formats, especially when receiver, it hasn't been an all that enthusiastic year at all. Running backs being able to get a little bit of volume on their own in the pass game. Couple that with the peace of mind, the known targets, not targets, touches rather, that they're going to get in this current era this year in the NFL with the way defenses are playing them. They're just as safe, but also upside projectable asset, a high-end running back. They just are. The highest of high ends of recent note, of course, being CMC. He returns, and of course, serious injury recovery. Just seeing him back is great. And man, talk about giving credence to the running back renaissance that I believe that we're entering. Getting a CMC back for the rest of this season. Or a little bit of a tempered, 16.7 points by his standards. Not great, but still respectable top 10 performance the first week back for him. CMC, you got to love the prospects if you have a high end running back. The general appreciation, sentiment, the positive boost that a CMC provides to the position, to people adopting this running back renaissance mindset. But overall, this week, it was not the incredible 30-plus point performances by a couple. A big drop-off from even 20-point thresholds when you even get from 4 to 5. RB1 still, even at the low end, was a 15-plus performer, but just not as great high-end production as we've seen. So, overall week-wise, not great in some ways, but also certainly not bad, certainly positive in other ways, with a CMC returning from injury, with a Bijan Robinson, the Dynasty darling, showing out there again. On the flip side, though, Saquon, Derrick Henry, Gibbs, Brees, Kyron, Devon, not in really anywhere close to the RB1, the top 12, top 10, top 5 production potential that we've seen. Just not there this week. So, hey, why not check in? Why not check in? Somebody all of a sudden much more willing to sell one of those guys. I'm absolutely interested in capturing on that. Moving on to injury-related conversation, wrapping up running back. Aaron Jones. A little bit of a heart attack with the cart coming out, but apparently that was just a stadium issue. And Aaron Jones does not appear to have anything major of an injury, which is great. Great for Aaron Jones. I think, look, he's clearly the top dog, has been the top dog there in Minnesota, and I think he's certainly got some running back one potential spike weeks in the chamber for him the rest of this season. Great to hear with Aaron Jones. Jonathan Brooks, want to talk about, alluded him with the Chuba discussion, obviously interlinked. Jonathan Brooks, they've got the bye this week, the Panthers do. He's going to be back for week 12. He just has to be. How big of a role does he have? Look, you got to temper expectations this season. I have to, hands up, I got to check myself in the door with over-projection with Jonathan Brooks this season a bit. Not going to play until well into the back half, the back quarter, back third of the season. They obviously chose to activate him, so they would avoid missing him altogether participating this season. But he's certainly been a full participant the last several practices, getting into a bit of a groove. Give him the final week of rest. With Miles Sanders dealing with a bit of an injury in his own right. Again, not with similar to Jones, not as severe as previously thought with a cart. Think of worst case scenario, but Brooks would love to see something. Love to see something very soon out of him. But even then, you got to understand Chuba Hubbard, how he's earned his place there, and might not really see much out of Jonathan Brooks this season. But I'm certainly holding out hope for what we see next season. And I said, talk about a tweet. Check out on X, Dynasty Psych, same here, same logo. Even in a split, long term, 55-45, whatever you want to call it, even extending 60-40 in a way. Jonathan Brooks, we know the type of player he is, the caliber of the player that the Panthers know that they drafted in the top 50 this past draft, knowing they had Chuba Hubbard as well. Jonathan Brooks will still have meaningful opportunities to produce. You just obviously have to largely temper, look in the mirror of what we expected this season. And look, to a degree, with expectations being reset to a decent degree, I think there's room for Jonathan Brooks to go up. With expectations, it is good in a way. What can be lost is with negative sentiment for a particular player, not the most positive feelings, a bit of a, oh no, what's happening, what's going on, a little bit of a panic setting in. When expectations are suppressed so low, don't have to do a lot to exceed them and to get a little bit more traction, a little bit favorable momentum. So Jonathan Brooks, we're going to see him not this week, but next week. And hey, who knows what he does? But I'm intrigued, and I'm certainly not selling if you have him. Only looking to potentially buy. Buy for a little bit. See if you can go for a couple thirds. A depth player plus a third. Jonathan Brooks, let's see something. Please, Panthers, please. Please. All right, receiver, thumbnail of the video, Jamar Chase, more than double the next closest guy. You add 2 and 3 at the position. Still don't even really sniff Jamar Chase's 55-point week. My goodness. Jamar Chase. Chase spikes. Chase spikes. The narrative here, the play on words. You want to chase spikes upside for any position, right? And I think Jamar Chase having the week that he did, it does provide some good, favorable trickle-down effect for the receiver, for the alpha, the number ones, the maybe not number ones this week, but the perceived, the dynasty number ones, provides you some, okay, look, if Chase went out and did that, maybe my Malik Neighbors can, maybe with a change in quarterback. Maybe my CeeDee Lamb can, with obviously another story, his quarterback, bit of an issue, but maybe my Justin Jefferson can. Maybe my Puka Nacua can. It's good to have. It's always good for a position to be carried by, vaunted up by a spike week. This case, Jamar Chase. But speaking of which, just talking about the guys, the number one, so to speak, that we hold in high regard. It was unusual company, the unusual suspects in the rest of this top 5. Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Talk about, honestly, a similar Rashid Shaheed type role where, really all or nothing. 3 targets, but 3 catches. Caught all of them. Caught 2 of them for 2 scores. 109 yards. MVS, man. Talk about, okay, if there's something that is not sustainable, it's MVS in this top 5. Calvin Ridley, though. Calvin Ridley with a really nice game. 9 targets. Seems to be finding a groove there in Tennessee, which is great to see for the position as well. Giving some inspiration for the guys that are on the older side in Dynasty, but can still produce for you. Still give you some hope. So good to see there from Ridley. Wallace at 4. Who's the last Wallace of note that we've had at receiver? No, it's not Mike Wallace. It's Tylan Wallace. No disrespect, Tylan. Talk about a guy coming out of Oklahoma State. Was a really, really, really interesting, intriguing college player. Obviously has been very much in isolation in terms of the NFL production. But this past week, look, on Thursday Night Football, again, similar to MVS, 3 for 3, one of which was a touchdown, goes for over 100 yards. Nice week from Tylan Wallace, but do not expect him to produce the 20 points at all, really, the rest of the season. I think it's relatively in isolation. You just think about the hierarchy there in Baltimore. I think Deontay Johnson's going to slowly but surely ease into a role. Of course, you've already got Zay Flowers there. You've got the tight ends. Of course, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, they're going to be the focal points, that rushing attack there. But nonetheless, it's interesting. Interesting to have a little Tylan Wallace. Hey, can you get him off of waivers? Can you sell him for anything for a pick? Be very interested in doing that. And then George Pickens. Look, I'm a Justin Fields guy, so I've been a little bit hurting when okay, Russell Wilson just takes over there. Fields, he said himself he could have played better, but right now I think it's a bit of a mirage. The Steelers, look, Russ can throw you the moon balls, just throw it up for you for grabs, but the reality is they're not a good red zone offense. Pickens, look, he's clearly showing through his talent. I mean, talk about a physical guy who just does not give one. You know what? Gotta like it. Gotta like the dog mentality there. But for Pickens, it's not an insane, still not an insane volume of targets. 7, converts 5 of them, which is great, gets the touchdown in there. I just don't know how sustainable it is. Russell Wilson there in Pittsburgh, and then with George Pickens, look, with this rise, I am interested in selling a little bit. I'm interested in feeling out there. Can I get a decent little first round pick? I'd be very intrigued if I am a George Pickens holder. To be clear, I don't have a George Pickens share, but talk about young receivers. Talk about great stories. Ricky Pearsall, John Mechie, guys who have fought through incredible adversity. You just love to see it. You love to see their respective first touchdowns in the NFL. Can they build some momentum? I think Ricky Pearsall certainly has the perceived runway to do so relative to a John Mechie. But hey, it's been rough in Houston. I know you've got Nico Collins, his return pretty imminent with the next game. Seemed like he might have been on Sunday Night Football this week, but not quite the case. So John Mechie, do not expect a consistent appearance in that end zone. Do not expect him to be a wide receiver 8 on the week, much if at all the rest of this week. But certainly some intrigue. 8 gives you 18.4, gets in the end zone there. He's connected to a quarterback, though. He's connected to a CJ Stroud, and I think he might just be there. He might just be there for a decent duration there. Rookie contract, next contract potentially. And hey, we know it's Nico. We know it's Tank Dell. Look, going beyond, Mechie might just be that wide receiver 3 in Houston, which is certainly serviceable, viable for a flex play, a deep flex play in your lineup. Puka, 14 targets. I just want to talk about the idea, talks about Hurts earlier at the quarterback position. I want to liken this comparison. Talk about a guy who's safe production. I mean, Puka Nacua, he just keeps on getting the rightful first look, the first option in these concepts, in his offense. He has garnered himself a hell of a role. And with his skill set, bigger bodied receiver who's got incredible after the catch ability, you just can't bring him down seemingly on first contact. Puka Nacua, man, you gotta feel tremendous. Talk about both floor and, of course, the ceiling combination with Puka, man. I've been saying, look, I previewed it dating back to well before the draft this past year, well before this season. After his rookie season, Puka Nacua there, if there was a guy knocking on the door of that tier 1, top 3, 4 players perceived at receiver, I mean, why is Puka Nacua? He is the guy, to be clear, right on that doorstep. And if he hasn't already, just talk about what a guy, the peace of mind you get with Puka Nacua in your lineup, man. I think it's really relatively unique. Confidence throwing out a Puka Nacua week in, week out. The receiver 1 production he can give you. And then, alluded to it, the usual suspects, not really there to be found. Your A.J. Browns, your Justin Jeffersons, Malik Neighbors, Garrett Wilsons, Jalen Waddles, C.D. Lambs. So, not great. Not great week for the usual suspects. But what was lost with them collectively, I do think Jamar Chase, his week alone, allows for a little bit of a cushion there. A little bit of a cushion for the receiver position, which I think is good and needed, because for all the down scoring talk, for all the double boxes or too high safety looks, it's great to just know the upside that exists, the spike potential for top high end guys. Is there going to be another 55-point week? Maybe not the rest of this season, but certainly could come close to it. Certainly the guys I just mentioned, 30-plus week potential. That's certainly on the horizon. 35 plus, maybe bordering 40 plus point weeks. That's still very possible. Just remains to be seen, though, right? Remains to be seen. And I think, given this type of week, it only also gives credence to the running back renaissance. Just talked about him, Neighbors. Look, could he get a new quarterback? Could there be a quarterback change there in New York? I think finally, are the leaders feeling pressure? Are the Dables, Shanes, even top down Rama Mara, who Mara said, I don't envision making any changes really. But could it change? Could it certainly change with continued struggle in New York? Malik Neighbors, hey, maybe he gets a bump from a quarterback change. I don't really know how realistic, if at all, that is to be expected, because Daniel Jones, he is the best quarterback that the Giants have. He is. I mean, I think it's wishful thinking, assuming, okay, well, just because Drew Lock maybe takes over, does he just only target? Like, I think with how bad it's been, you want to assume the best. You want to assume that it can't be this bad, but Malik Neighbors, I think we're waiting for the quarterback change in the offseason. That's just where I'm at. I mean, clearly a special player. Talk about a dominant target assumer. What's the right word here? Just a target monster. Target monster that Malik Neighbors has been. Let's see the quality go up with a potential Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward. Long-term connection. I think that's potentially inbound for Malik Neighbors, and I think you got to feel good about that. Certainly not looking to trade for the sake of it right now. Talk about top dogs of past. Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill, man. He, in a large way, epitomizes a little bit of the wide receiver positional struggles, right? Overall, the narrative, the perception of them. And of course, look, with your quarterback being gone for large stretches of the season, that's of course going to be an issue. And I think relating it to Malik Neighbors, look, receivers, for as much talent as they have in isolation, you are a function of the quality of the targets you're getting from your quarterback. And Tyreek, look, just hasn't been there. And with him and Waddle even, are there going to be number one weeks the rest of the season? Yes, I would definitely assume so, but relative few and far between. It just hasn't been great, and I'm certainly, as a Tyreek Hill owner myself in a couple leagues, I'm just kind of crossing my fingers and hoping, because look, no one really wants to pay up for me for a 30-plus-year-old Tyreek Hill. At the same time, though, talk about explosiveness. I'm just hoping for the best. It's a tough spot if you have Tyreek Hill. Thoughts on trading for Rome Odunze? What's up, Ant? With the Bears getting you. Yeah, in Dynasty, I am very, very bullish on Rome Odunze's Dynasty future. I think this has been a time to look to buy. It still is arguably a time to buy with a rough season with the rookies, with Caleb Williams, with Rome Odunze. Although, look, we've just seen, a 100-point week last 2 weeks ago. Him able to assume any given week, the true number one role in that offense. I absolutely am interested in trading for Rome Odunze in a dynasty perspective. Redraft, I mean, you really can't expect much production in the context of immediate right now, but in dynasty, absolutely interested acquiring Rome Odunze. Absolutely. And, even with, the Bears' new pass game coordinator right now, and obviously new OC, you would think, look, only get better, right? Things only get better, but we'll see. We will see there what happens with Chicago the rest of this season. Certainly, again, another rookie receiver, liking it to Malik Neighbors, the offseason is when, the good long-term change, the positives truly take place. So up until then, I think you can have a bit of an maybe extended buy opportunity. Talking about being a function of your quarterback, that's what Garrett Wilson was the first couple seasons. Look, has had certainly some numerous strong weeks this season there in New York. But Aaron Rodgers, man, that offense, it's just talk about a team in complete tumult. It's just total lackluster. I mean, the Jets get absolutely routed by the Cardinals. I mean, I certainly have to reevaluate and understand how I overshot with Devontae Adams and his expectation to be able to form a good rapport immediately with Aaron Rodgers. It's just not. It just doesn't seem to be there this season, at least. I mean, the Jets, they're going to have to win out. I mean, is there a chance? They don't have the toughest schedule. I mean, possibly. But things, you would think, I sound like an insane person saying this time after time again. Things have to change right now, but they just don't look like they are. So with Garrett Wilson, look, certainly interested in talking about a player looking to potentially buy low. If people are like, well, crap, I have a Jets player. Certainly long term, Garrett Wilson's a guy I'd be intrigued in a funny spot. Speaking of which, you got Wilson, Nico, Marv starting three, and then Higgins primarily as the backup filling in there at number 4. So unsure on going on Rome fully. I mean, yeah, you got to look in the mirror and be like, okay, what would I functionally expect out of a Rome Odunze for my team? And it's not it's not production. It's not to be. I mean, look, but with T Higgins, I mean, at least in theory, I guess, looking back, not looking forward, but retroactively, well, at least you would in theory have production in the first place, right? With the T Higgins injury, that seems to be, hopefully he's on the outside of that, recovering, hopefully imminently returning. You would hope, but so then in that sense, hey, Rome, at least he could be in a position to contribute to accrue points for you, but nothing crazy, not quite obviously to the level that other rookies have produced in this class, but I'm absolutely intrigued in buying Rome Odunze, buying as much Rome Odunze as I can in this current period. I mean, it's how does the rest of your team look? How much? I mean, are you obviously it all starts with what is your objective for this season, right? And really beyond Dynasty, it's not just about any one season, the here and now, but what's your objective? Rome, I mean, with the guys you have, obviously you've got a very young, very good receiving, top 3 core. Obviously Higgins as well. I think he's going to have a positive trajectory with becoming a potential alpha in another offense, potentially, hey, what if he's Drake May's guy in the offseason? What if he goes to Carolina and improve Carolina, where all of a sudden Bryce Young looks like he's truly the guy for the future? So I'm certainly not looking to shake up the 4 that you have already. But hey, if depending on the format, depending on how deep it is, depending on how many receivers you can start, Rome is certainly a guy that I'm interested in pursuing. If you've got potential pieces to work with, a trade that would make sense with the Rome Odunze holder in your league. I mean, it all comes down to, I guess, what is your objective? What type of contention or rebuild situation, how, where exactly you're skewed toward with respect to this season. And hey, if you're not one of the top teams in this league, and there's some better, more potent people ahead of you, why not try to proactively get some value beyond this season? Why not? Burrow, Kamara, Taylor, Nico Wilson, Mark Andrews, Marv, Love as Superflex. So I mean, yeah, you've certainly got that RB production to seemingly put you in contention any given week. And obviously Burrow, Love as your quarterbacks. Second on the moment in an 8-man league. Okay. And then in an 8-man league too, though, I mean, in your lineup, it's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's like an 8 by, if I'm reading that, 8 by 8. mean, you're pretty well. You're well sorted as is. You just want to shoot for true difference making type production, and I think Rome. I look in an 8x8. I don't know. I mean, certainly not for the rest of this season. You can't expect Rome to be in in the context of your format, but certainly, I mean, even think about the value of your rookie picks, first, seconds. They carry some weight. Those picks do. Just even thinking of a mid second round pick, to call it pick 16. That's an early second in a 12 team. Talk about the end of the third is the end of the second round pick compared to a 12 team. So it's interesting looking at someone long term over the next. But I think T Higgins as well though has long term upside though. That T Higgins is only 26, right? Let me like he's no way older. T Higgins is I'm pretty confident. No way, not 27 yet. T Higgins. It's 25. Yeah, that's what I thought. T Higgins 25. T Higgins has long term. He has that long term upside though, and I think I wouldn't really want to replace T Higgins. I would be more so interested in if you've got excess. I mean, look, Superflex, even the value of a Superflex, two quarterbacks in your 8-man league. I mean, you've got obviously you want a type of bona fide stud, obviously in Burrow, what he's shown obviously time and time again, but even like quarterback, like you could find like who's even there. I assume there's got to be guys on the waiver wire, but Giants having seen okay him going to the Giants, T Higgins going to the Giants. I guess that's a possibility, but I'm not. I'm really not trying to sell T Higgins right now, though. I'm really not excited about moving off of T Higgins. I'd more so be interested in looking at other avenues. What if you throw a pick, you throw a second, and I mean, who are some of the guys on your bench that might be of interest to the other trade partner? I mean, even quarterback. There's got to be guys 8x8. So only 16. I mean, that's like the only half of the quarterbacks starting in any given week are even going to be of potential relevance in your format. So there's certainly depth at quarterback. So hey, maybe I'll look to allow Jordan Love to get some momentum back under his legs, and hey, can you get somebody to pursue Jordan Love? It's really about it's a fine line about chasing that difference making production league, man. Tight end. All right. You up the guy. Appreciate that, Ant. Appreciate you, my guy. All the support. Anybody who's watching it so far or will watch it means the world. All the support. Trust me. Trust me. Tight end. Rounding out the Week 10 recap. Kelsey, Andrews, Hudson. Yeah, Tanner Hudson, if you didn't already know. Laporta, Hawkinson. So some notable guys. Nice to see who comprise the top five, the majority of the top five, but Travis Kelsey carries the position overall, man. The only guy to go over 20. And to be clear, this isn't quite a tight end premium format. This is raw PPR numbers. But this just gets at, man, the idea of how you need to juice your tight end scoring to make them remotely relevant. It's just, it's insanity. Speaking of which, Kelsey at 1, it's great to see Hawkinson. Well, early stages of his return from injury. 15 plus. I feel good about him. If feel good long term with TJ Hawkinson. The caliber player that he is. So great to see him. And speaking too, you almost with this week, you see, it's like you just want to bet the vets. You want to bet the vets in Dynasty at tight end. I mean, really, the question I'm asking myself, because what are you going to bet on the youth? We see Kyle Pitts. I mean, it's the incredible merry-go-round. It's look, I was never even able to get a Kyle Pitts, and all the startups I'm in never was able to even get a Kyle Pitts. everybody obviously perceives, oh, he's this special difference maker, but he epitomizes, this idea of, well, what upside is there really betting on these youth tight end position? Obviously, Sam Laporta last year. It's great to see him returning a little bit here, and obviously Brock Bowers, of course. Those are the only real youth I'm willing to bet on. You look at a guy like a Kincaid. This idea of who the future is at the tight end position, it's Brock Bowers, clearly, and then Sam Laporta. So from a dynasty perspective, I think they're still right there. A true dynasty long-term perspective, they're right there at the top. Even then, a guy like, Trey McBride's yet to have a receiving touchdown. Right? See, he gets the targets. It's good. It's great to see. He's had 9 or more targets, 8 or more target. We'll draw the line at 8 4 times already this season. But he hasn't even gotten a touchdown. It's like the Julio Jones, so to speak, of old. So it's just tight end, man. It truly is the forgotten child, the problem child of fantasy. And even to a large degree in Dynasty, too, when you look ahead. There is certainly no Brock Bowers coming up anytime soon with how special he was as a prospect. Talk about some intrigue. I saw if you're a Maction freak, Harold Fannin, Bowling Green State University. He's certainly a receiving threat. Could make some noise, could be of some intrigue in your mid-rounds of your rookie drafts. Maybe take an upside shot there. But, and hey, Colson Loveland, Colson Loveland looks like he might be a first-round pick, but he's a very good, well-rounded guy. But what can you expect out of young tight ends? Clearly not a lot. Not a lot. And so in Dynasty, what bad does it really do you just to really go in, pursue the vets relative to any other position? Guys, thank you for the support. You watched any second, any amount of time on this video. It means the world to me. I will see you in the next one soon enough. Have a great one. Peace.